Hello, magical people of the internet. I am Jen, and welcome to I Never Thought I Would, where we discuss doing things we never thought we would do and the fascinating places that they can lead us. I have an extraordinary guest today. She is an award-winning and international best-selling author, an advocate for special needs and disabilities, and she's also an online TV host, Mary Elizabeth Jackson. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you? I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
I am so excited to chat with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. So, as most writers have wonderful imaginations, I'm sure your imagination has led you to do maybe one or two things that you never thought you would. And I would love it if you can share one of those stories with us today.
Absolutely. So I never thought I would have a baby at 45. So that's not something that women, I think, who have children or want children really set out to do. So, when I found out I was pregnant, it was like, what? I mean, I jokingly say that God looked at me and said, "Lady, you look bored. I'm going to give you a baby." And so, I didn't get any memo or check yes or no. Are you busy right now with your life? It's just kind of like, wow. And I remember praying for a miracle for my father at that time. And the next thing I knew, I was pregnant. So I tell people, when your name is Mary, you need to specify your miracles you're praying for, because you might end up pregnant, right? So through that pregnancy and the birth, the recovery of what we might be facing with him and what I survived, would he survive? The interesting thing happened was I birthed the children's book series. So I always say I had twins. I had Carson, I had Poohlicious. So, and so through that, I had never thought I'd have a book come to me or even be, and I know we talked about this, I never knew that would be my journey. But part of that story is I sat on it for 2 years because I didn't think my words, anyone would read them. I really didn't think, well, who's going to run and read this? It's so cute, but I'm going to just leave it for my children. But something kept tapping me on the shoulder saying, you need to do something about this. So I never thought I would be asking not a perfect stranger, but someone I knew. I said, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea how to even accomplish this. I don't even know what I need to do with it. So I started asking, and then it led to an introduction. And
Okay, I'm going
then,
to pause you there
yes,
because we're going to get to the book and how the book came about in a few
yes.
minutes.
Oh,
But
yes, sorry.
okay,
But
no,
it's just kind
that's
of one of those.
okay. Because
Yeah.
so many of the I never thought I would lead to another I never thought I would, that leads to
Yes.
another never thought I would.
Yes.
So, but we will have plenty of time to chat about the book and how the book came about. So I want to ask, you mentioned about what you went through with the birth and with the recovery, and you have 3 children. So this was your third child, not your first child.
Right. This was my third. So my children are very spread apart, 21, 17, and 8. And I
Wow.
have 2 children that were born nonverbal. So my journey as an advocate, it was kind of birthed with my middle daughter when she was about 18 months, is when we realized there were some challenges there. And I was just as green as I could be. I had no idea that her language that she was speaking, which was not English, I had to really teach her English, her own language, which is interesting. But I had no idea the journey that we would go through, and that through that journey I would end up having to become an advocate on a much bigger level, to the point of being involved in a lawsuit with the county that we lived in, going to Capitol Hill and sitting in meetings with state representatives and senators saying, okay, this should never happen to a child.
Let me pause you there because
Yes.
I need to fill in some blanks
Yes.
before we go down this road.
Sure.
Okay, because first I want to talk about your initial I never thought I would, which was you never thought you would have a baby at 45, which was Carson.
Right.
So, and you talked about there was some sort of complication there.
There was.
Can you tell us a little bit about that before we get into the advocacy story and how you became an advocate?
Sure.
So this totally came out of the blue, took you by surprise. You thought you were done with having children. You didn't think you were going to get pregnant. And your father was ill at the time. So you were praying for a miracle for him.
Yeah.
And the miracle came in the form of a new little bundle that you were carrying around. So were the complications with the pregnancy or with the birth or both? And was it because you were an older woman? I don't think you're older, but
it is true.
But
that is a fact.
But for pregnancy, anything over 35 is considered a geriatric pregnancy. So
I know, sounds awful.
Isn't that a terrible word?
It is terrible because we're not we're not with walkers, and maybe our ovaries are.
Yes, exactly. So can you just kind of describe a little bit about that experience and what you kind of went through in terms of coming to terms with the fact that you thought you were at a completely different stage of your life and now you're going back to pregnancy and diapers and all of that all over again?
Shock. Is that a good word for it? I mean, literally when the nurse called me on the phone and said, Mrs. Jackson, are you sitting down? You either have the C word or you're pregnant, right? Because those are your two extremes. And so when she said you're pregnant, I burst into tears. I threw the phone. So I did call back and apologize later because I was really in shock over it. Because I really thought there was something physically wrong. I really thought there was a tumor or something because I was in incredible pain with my pregnancy all the way through. I did not call my husband. I was afraid it would kill him. So I just didn't even call him. I sat there and cried for hours, and then we were at a game for my oldest daughter. And he sat down and I said, well, I got my blood work back. And he said, yes. And I said, well, we're having another baby. This is where I choose to tell him, right? I mean,
in public, so he can't freak out.
Right. Well, his face went from this to this. And so he was, for about 6 weeks, he didn't say much because he was in the same place I was. How old are we? Well, I always joke around and say, was it legal to have a baby at 45? Right. We're like, when did it happen? Because at that age, you're like, well, did we, it's a baby coming by stork. I mean, what?
Well, it's more and more common these days, actually, women in their 40s and even early 50s having babies.
Absolutely.
From freezing their eggs. Yeah.
Yes. And having another marriage later in life and wanting to have that baby with that new husband. That was told to me when I went in, they said, oh, you're 40, you're not even that old. I was like, what? Yes, I am. And I had just started looking for a job and I was going back to school. And then all of a sudden I'm pregnant. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do any of this. And the other thing is when I got done being in shock over being pregnant, I actually helped out at my daughter's middle school with theater and with show choir. And we were choreographing Grease, which was one of my favorites, right? Yes. And I was like, oh, I am so doing Grease. There is no way that I am not doing this. So I'm like, I'm going to come out stronger than I was going into this whole thing. I was so determined. So Jennifer, I am a 45-year-old pregnant woman in there with middle schoolers choreographing, right? I'm determined to do this. So until about week 31, 32, everything was fine. My OB was like, I think she was waiting for something, right? And she kept saying, I'm so impressed how well you're doing. I'm like, hey, I'm determined, right? And they called me and told me that he was not growing. And so for about a week or so, there was no growth with him. And so the latter part of the 6 week of pregnancy, 5-6 weeks, was very stressful. Every couple of days and with a specialist, having him measured, it was just so, it was so stressful, you can imagine. And so I have what's called intrauterine growth restriction, which is rare, but it does happen. So the placenta was not providing him with the nutrition that he needed. So first they'll see a decrease in the growth or no growth in the circumference of the belly of the fetus. And then maybe sometimes it'll move to the femur bone and then the brain. And of course, at that point, they have to take a baby out immediately. So you're sitting on some high pressure and stress every single day, hoping that ultrasound is going to show the baby is doing well and that they're okay. So they had prepared us that he might be brain damaged and never walk. And they also wouldn't let me have a VBAC because they were afraid he couldn't survive going through the whole labor. And So he to me is a true miracle. And actually all three of my kids are, because I was told I could never have children. So I had 4 pregnancies and
Wow.
3 babies. And he came out, never went to the NICU. One thing that he could not do when he came out was he couldn't swallow. So I had to pump, and then we had to put it in a syringe, and I had to put my finger in his mouth with a glove to teach him how to actually swallow.
Mhm.
So there were those kind of complications. I, however, ended up with a post-surgical infection that landed me back in the hospital for 5 days when he was less than 2 weeks old.
Oh my God.
So I could not breastfeed. I was on 3 antibiotic cocktail around the clock for 5 days. An infectious disease came in and said, Miss Jackson, we can't tell you what's happening here. We've never seen this before. So it's still.
Oh my God.
So when I say that I didn't know I was coming out and we didn't know what was going to happen with him, it is not a dramatization. It is the truth of what happened in my life. And so him being the child that he is a true miracle to me. And all the therapies that we've gone through and getting him where he is, he's a rock star as far as
So
I'm
did he
concerned.
have brain damage when he was born?
No, he did not. But what he is he used to be level 2 autism. He's level 1 now because he's been in therapy since he was 18 months old. He was in feeding therapy. He's still in speech and physical therapy,
Mhm.
or OT, excuse me, not physical, but OT. And
Which
he
is
has
occupational therapy?
occupational, yes. He has overcome so much in his life that unless you were trained, you might, if I brought him in here right now, you probably think he was a fairly normal child,
Mhm.
a pretty basic 8-year-old. He's bouncing off the wall. He's a boy, lots of energy, but there are those things that he still is very challenged with. And
Mhm.
so he was nonverbal. He is fully verbal now. So he's got sensory processing issues. He has language processing issues. And so those all present a lot of challenges. It presents a lot of challenges in the learning area for a child because they really cannot be taught the way a regular child is
Yeah.
taught, and so it was many years of what people don't realize is when you have a child that comes into the world like this, whether their disabilities are visible or not visible, there's a lot of therapies and sacrifice of time that goes into caring for these children. And he didn't sleep for the first 2 years of his life. Here I was already 45. And so you're so much more tired as a mother at that age. And it took a toll on my body. Having that infection took a toll on my body. So to the point that here I am at my age now and still getting my strength back in my body, my physical well-being.
Mhm.
So it was during the time of nursing him and being in this place of all I can say to you is that I was immersed in a place of complete gratitude like I've never been before in my life, to be alive and for him to be alive, and to survive, is where the download from the first book came. So it all
Yes.
ties in together. So I had
Well,
no idea that was going to happen.
thank you so much for sharing this story with me
Mm.
and with everybody watching. I know it's painful to recount these things, but I know it's also healing when we
Yeah.
share our stories, and it's also helpful to other people out there going through their own type of trauma, just knowing that they're not alone.
Right.
And so now I want to get into being an advocate. So you have Carson, who's special needs, and then you also mentioned your daughter was special needs, and you actually needed to take legal action because of what happened with her. So can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was, what the legal battle was about, and how you ended up being an advocate for special needs and disabilities?
Yes. So my journey as an advocate began, like I said, when she was about 18 months and learning that um, her level at 2.5 for her languages really was at 18 months. There was
Mhm.
people who came in, a group, Rainbow Early Intervention came in and started testing the children in preschool. And so we had her tested and didn't realize that what we thought was her cute little language because she cluttered. So she talked like this, okay, mommy. That's how my daughter spoke. And so we just got used to it, right? Because I'm like, okay, she'll outgrow it, because that's what you would think about a child. And it was really that she had a learning disability, and she was her developmental growth was delayed. I saw her do so many things that I thought were so brilliant. And that's the thing about the world decides that these kids are broken. But if you really spend time with them, you see the brilliance in each one of these children. And it's
Definitely.
something that I really focus on, is the brilliance that's inside them. Their brains learn differently. Just give them
Mhm.
the tools,
Exactly.
get
They
them.
don't fit inside the box. So
Mm-mm.
we have to get out of the box to help them.
Right. And we have to give them the right therapies. So when a parent is very has a hard time, they don't want a child to be labeled. I do understand that, but in order to get the services a child needs, they've got to have a diagnosis, and a diagnosis comes with a label. When you go to the doctor, if they don't label you and diagnose you as strep or flu or even COVID these days, you can't get the correct treatment that you need. And it's really
Exactly.
the same thing, because a child can overcome. I mean, at 4, Carson was a level 2 autistic child. He's level 1 now. I mean, because we've done so much work with him, it really requires the investment of the parent and the whole family. I mean, there's 5 of us. We're the Jackson 5, right?
Mhm.
And so he's the puzzle piece that brought us all together. And it takes the whole family to raise him. But with my middle daughter, when she was 4 or 5, she was abused for 8 months in the school system by her teacher. And there were about 7 families that we went into, pursued legal against the school system over it. And I mean, when you receive a phone call from the police department letting you know what's happened to your child in school, because she was not fully verbal at that time, like she could not answer questions, what, where, who, why, when. And so when you have no idea that something's going on because your child can't tell you, it changes who you are as a person. I became a different mother in the instant I received that phone call, from where I already was different as a mom, right? Raising a child with needs. Then I get this call from the police department. Somebody has injured my child for 8 months. They have broken my innocent child. And it doesn't matter what format it is, whether it's sexual, physical, mental, or emotional abuse. All of it is very, very bad for a child. It
Definitely.
just should never happen. And so within me, here I am, just this mom, but within me came out this person, this bear that was like, okay, this has to stop. This, I'm sorry. Okay, this has to be over with now for any other child ever in the world, right? This is what I felt. So I went about trying to get law changed in the state I live in, so that there could be cameras in the classrooms to protect children. That is still an ongoing battle. We have about 5 or 6 states in the United States who are now falling in line, but it's been a very uphill battle. And the excuses, part of it's financial, I understand, but the rest of it, it it doesn't hold water when it
But
comes
is it
to,
really financial anymore when
I
you have
know,
smartphones and tablets and everybody has one? You know,
right?
I don't think that's I don't think that's an excuse anymore. It might have been an excuse 15 years ago, but
It's not a good enough excuse, and it's something to kind of hide behind. Let's just find a reason to say no. Like, why don't children get more services in school? Well, we don't have enough money. Well, let's figure it out. Okay, because these kids who need the services they need are our future doctors and lawyers and potential teachers and dentists and bus drivers and firemen and policemen. We need to educate them, and we need to
yes,
help them be as successful and functional in life as they possibly can be. And that is our responsibility, isn't it?
100%.
Yep.
So I'm assuming the teacher was fired, faced
Yes. Yeah.
some faced some
It,
sort of criminal charges. Um,
yes. But that's where the law failed us, and it has failed families across the country. I was actually interviewed by the, which department? It was the department in Washington, about our case. They had gone across the country and they were looking for cases to talk about, and they said hands down cases across the country were just, they were losing because of the way our legal system is, and finding loopholes. And the justice not being there. It's like people look for a physical sign on a body of a child, but if it's years after everything's happened, if they don't see a physical sign, they don't believe that it ever happened. I mean, it's very much a double-edged sword. And when you are in a county that's a good old boy system, you've got a double-edged sword. You've got a person who was fired, who was never allowed to be around children again, lost her license, but never really served the correct amount of jail time because of a loophole. And I don't know what even would be a correct amount of jail time for a person who does that to other children, who goes into school knowing what they're going to be doing. Okay. Because if you're doing it for years or you're doing it for months, then it's calculated.
Definitely.
And you've got a problem. Okay. And then if you're training your aides to have the same kind of treating children the same way, then you're even worse than what you were originally, you know? And so when I'm dealing with a child who has physical evidence of trauma, I mean, she's 17 now, right? Every once in a while, something will come up and there will be memories that happen, and we have to go through all that. When you have physical signs of a child who's been through trauma, things have happened. I don't care how much a person lies about it. Things have happened. I had to sit and watch people on the stand talk about, now I've never written about this, Jennifer, yet. And this is the most I've ever even talked about it publicly. But I had to watch people on trial stand there and say they didn't know the difference between neglect and abuse. How could you, as a employee of a school system, not know the difference? I mean, it's just, our world is so broken in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So I still am working toward, having this rectified, not just for my child, but for all children out there. It's very, very important that their responsibility is taken for this, and that, parents can feel free to send their child to school knowing they're going to be okay.
Definitely. That is just a basic standard expectation when you send a child to school, that they are going to be cared for properly, that people are going to be sensitive to their needs and their feelings, and that educators need to acknowledge that not every child is the same. Not every child is going to respond the same. My heart goes out to you for what your daughter went through, and especially the fact that she was unable to verbalize or articulate the abuse. That's just completely, like,
it's devastating.
It's devastating. Exactly.
Somebody took a precious, I wish I had a picture of her at that age, but to take the child and to inflict upon them whatever you're inflicting upon them, and breaking them, because when a child is the age, we learned from the forensic psychologist, he sat us down and talked to us, when a child is at the age of 3, 4, 5, and 6, when they witness one of their peers being abused, they have tremendous guilt for not saving them, even if the abuse did not happen to themselves. And she witnessed, but it also occurred to her as well. But it blocks the pathways in the brain for them to grow. So some of that trauma gets stuck in there, and it's really hard to get out. And when I say her elementary years, it's by the grace of God, I'm standing here right now, are sitting here right now talking to you, and I didn't fall completely apart and not be able to put myself back together, because the stress from it was incredible. And to wrap it back around to when I was pregnant with Carson and finding out he wasn't growing and on bed rest, is when we finally went to trial, and I had to be on the stand to testify.
Oh my God.
And it was like something out of a movie. Like, I think I probably left my body at that particular scene in my own life.
Understandably.
And I remember the defense attorney, he was dragging it out, and the judge called him up and said, listen, this woman is supposed to be on bed rest. You need to wrap it up now. And if you have something to say it. Otherwise, leave her alone and get her off the stand now. And it was enough. We could all hear it. And I just remember being there up on that stand, and oh, wow, this is also hard to talk about, but trying to defend her and praying to God I wouldn't lose him. So,
yeah. Oh my God.
it's still I guess
I'm
it's
so
pretty raw still.
grateful for you. No, exactly. It's so traumatic. Like, and to be going through both of those things at the same time, and knowing that standing up to defend your daughter is actually putting your health and your unborn child at risk.
Yeah.
You know, it's a crossroads that nobody should ever have to face. And I'm so
No.
sorry that you had to go through that. I'm sorry you had to go through what you went through with your
Any of
daughter,
this.
period, let alone
Yeah.
under the circumstances that you were facing at the time. You are such a strong woman, and you are a true inspiration. And I'm just so grateful that you had the courage to share this with us today. I know it's not easy to talk about.
No, I didn't know I would.
No,
I didn't know I would,
I
because
didn't know where this was going to
I
go
thought we
either.
I thought we were talking about happy stuff, but it's okay, because I feel like life is sprinkled with happiness, along with, if that's what we want to manifest in our lives and we keep putting that out there, we do have to keep going, and we do have to pick ourselves up. And I must have been in, God carried me through all that. That's all I can say, because I don't know how anybody else would get through it without losing your mind. So he
And
kept me strong, and I knew that there was a purpose. And having Carson, when all that went down and I lost my belief system and a lot of things, Carson is the reason I had to keep going. God had given me this precious gift, and I was like, you can't not take care of a child. So he gave me purpose, and look at where it's led.
I know, and that's what I was going to say. This is the perfect time to segue into talking about your book that was inspired, and you sat on the idea for a couple of years because you didn't have the confidence. You didn't think that anybody would be interested in reading it or publishing it. So let's talk about Poohlicious, the wonder of me.
Yes. And
So
actually, it's so cute. My son is on all the covers, right? His little picture. So that's the first one.
oh,
And he's a precious baby. But this just launched June 2nd.
okay.
And this is actually a replica photograph of the butterfly sanctuary in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Wow.
So we just thought that was a very innocent kind of, oh, the wonder of me is, I don't know, I could write children's books all day long because I have inspiration, right? Every day something he does, I'm like, oh, that's a book, and the wonder of me is really about that age of 4 to 8, 4 to 7, because their curiosity, and it's filled with so much integrity, and it's so transparent, so real, and so beautiful. And they're just kind of figuring themselves out. And it's such an awkward stage, but it's so cute too, so.
Definitely. So how did the series get started? You went through a lot of trauma. You had trauma outside of the pregnancy. You had trauma within the pregnancy. There was trauma health-wise, the infection, you were put in the hospital. Your son wasn't developing properly once he was born. So where did this book come about? How did the series come about? And what gave you the confidence to finally go to this person that you knew not very well, but to get the ball rolling with getting your stories out there? How did that happen?
Well, like I said, after having him and just being in this place of gratitude for, I was alive and I survived. It was like I took a deep breath, and I was nursing him, and I was like, oh God, we're here. You're okay. I'm okay. We can do this. Thank you, God, so much for saving both of us in this life to live. And there was an instant download, and I really am not exaggerating. You and I are actresses, right? Leave drama on the stage. But there was an instant download of the story about Poohlicious and how perfectly made mommy thinks I am. And because I was looking at him, and I'm like, you are just perfect. Absolutely everything about you. I don't care what medicine says or the world might say. To me, you're perfect. And that's how we kind of look at our babies. And so it's about finding that perfection and that beauty within what appears broken, because it really, it lies there, it's there, whatever it is, it's still whole, and it's got its beauty. And so this story just came to me like that. And I'm serious, that's how it happened. So for me, I always have my voice recorder I can use on my phone, or I always have a notebook with me, because I never know when inspiration is going to come. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so cute, I'll save it for my kids, right? So I didn't know I was supposed to do anything with it. But for 2 years, it just felt like somebody was tapping me on the shoulder saying, you need to do something with this. You need to do something with this story. And I just was like, fine. I was yelling it, fine. I don't know what to do, but I will. So I went and spoke to someone who was academically published, which is a naive thing, because there are dozens and millions of publishers out there, thousands of them, in different genres. And, one may do a specific, one may do a bunch of different kinds, but it's never the same, because academically published is an entire different island than children's. Anyways, so I read it to him and he was like, I don't get it. And, or he was like, I don't understand. And it's because he's academic, right? And I'm coming from a mom's place. And he said, I want to introduce you to somebody. So he introduced me to Thornton Klein. And Thornton Klein and I met. Set out everything I had been writing at that time, because all this stuff started flowing. It was really funny. Everything was rhyming, I was rhyming. I was like, what is happening with me? I'm just writing and rhyming. And so he said, oh, I love this one. And he hyper-focused in on Perfectly Precious, Poohlicious. Now the word is funny, but that's because to me, it's the embodiment of innocence of childhood and all that goes with it and the beauty of it. But it's also a funny word because children love funny words. Dr. Seuss is one of my favorites because I love how he just kind of breaks that whole rules for writing words. And so he said, can I write 10 songs for this book? And I went, well, sure. So in a week, he had 10 songs written, a little originals. They're 20 to 30 seconds.
Wow.
My daughters recorded the music in his studio. So, it's a family thing that just, I never thought that would happen. Right. So you can find the CD on Amazon. It's beautiful little songs that are sweet and loving and calming and great for reading time, So then he and I wrote the second book together, and then we wrote the third one together. And then we have a middle grade reader coming out October 19th. So in each of these books, I have an I am page, and it's to get children started on that language of I am love, I am joy, I am amazing, I am awesome, that kind of language. And the third book actually has in the back, I write all about how affirmations have worked for me in my life and my children, how I use them daily. And how you can get started too by using you are when you talk to your child, because we need to pour into them what we want to see come out of them, because they believe what we say to them.
Yes.
They emulate everything in our environment. So if you're constantly telling your kid how bad they are, how do you think they're going to show up? They're going to show up the way that, and it's a psychological thing. It's subconscious. We don't always know we're doing this. So just try it, start telling them all the great things about them and see if they don't start showing up like that.
Exactly. This is so brilliant.
Oh,
I'm so excited that we got to have this conversation today.
Me too.
You took me through all the feels. I am moved. I am inspired. I was devastated to hear your story, but at the same time, you came through the other end. You overcame all of these challenges. And now you're an award-winning and international best-selling author, which I'm sure you never thought you would be either.
No, and it's so fun because the international comes with the collaboration of other people whose stories are raw and powerful. And the other bestseller is a book about overcoming fear to become an entrepreneur and journeys. And they're just, it's amazing what people can do when they come together. And it's amazing what we can do when we're supported by others. And, if I can go through this, and there are other stories, of course, in my life, like everybody has lots of stories, right? But I'm here and I'm excited about life. I'm excited about living life, and I'm excited about being productive and creating. And not stopping, just moving forward.
Yes.
Where we are in this life, we got to focus on where is our power and where are our choices that we have. This is what I did to help my girls get through last year with the pandemic. What are your choices today? Well, you
Yeah.
could choose how you feel about the situation, and we can put an imaginary bubble around ourselves and stay in here, let everything stay out there, and just focus on being productive. What makes you
Mhm.
happy, what fills you up, what gives you inspiration, and how you can serve others.
Amazing. So please tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your books, and if there is a website they can go to if they're looking for resources for their special needs child, or maybe for themselves if they have some sort of disability. Please let us know all of these things. And of course, the links will be below.
Sure. Yeah. Just go to maryejackson.com. The books are all there. And the links are actually, I have links there to my special needs TV show and Writers Corner Live. So, there are interviews there. We're starting special needs show back up because it took a little bit of hiatus through,
Mhm.
through this past, months of everything that's going on with everyone. But it's got great interviews on there, and I've got a couple of videos. I will continue to add videos to my website with information for parents and families and caregivers. And I will continue to add things on there, PDFs that people can download, information to help, because it can be very lonely when you first get a diagnosis of a child, or children. I know someone who just got diagnosed with twins, and her twins are on the spectrum. And, what do I do? I don't even know what to do. And my first thing would say, research what they've been diagnosed with, empower yourself with it, empower yourself with that knowledge, and and help your child to understand it as well, because then it can take you from feeling helpless to feeling hopeful and being empowered to go, okay. So it's kind of like if somebody's diagnosed with cancer, the whole diet has to change. Maybe the home environment has to change, exercising, adding in more water, and cutting out certain things in the diet. It's sort of kind of the same thing. You know what I mean?
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so inspired by you. Like I said, this has been
Oh,
such an incredible conversation, and I'm sure your courage has helped so many other people that are overcoming some sort of challenge in their life. So thank you so much.
thank you very much. We hope that our stories can help inspire others, because, we need to take our stories and then help others get through it too, and know, you can come through this. We
Yes,
all have a dark night of the soul, and we have those valleys we go through, don't we?
yes, we do. And I'd like to thank all of you out there in the interweb. Thanks for tuning in today. And I would like to challenge you to do something you never thought you would do. Let us know what it is in the comments and where it leads you, and have a magical day.